Hey youth group, Troy here with another Wednesday night devotion. I would like to begin tonight's devotion with a question. When was the first time that Jesus' disciples referred to Jesus as the Son of God and then worshiped Him? I'll give you 4 clues. The first clue is that this story is in all 3 of the synoptic Gospels, Matthew, Mark, and John, not Luke. The second clue is that this is a story that has been depicted by many artists over the centuries and produced beautiful works of art based on this story. The third clue is that this story takes place soon after another miraculous story, which is the feeding of the 5,000. It could possibly have been even the night of after that happened, but probably a day or two. And the last and final clue will probably give it away, is that this story happens on water. That's right, you guessed it, it's when Jesus walked on water. Let me read you the story. Even though it's in all 3 Gospels, I'm going to concentrate on just the reading of Mark. Okay. Immediately, Jesus made his disciples get into the boat and go on ahead of him to Bethsaida. While he dismissed the crowd after leaving them, he went up on a mountainside to pray. Later that night, the boat was in the middle of the lake, and he was alone on land. He saw the disciples straining at the oars because the wind was against them. Shortly before dawn, he went out to them walking on the lake. He was about to pass by them, but when they saw him walking on the lake, they thought he was a ghost. They cried out because they all saw him and were terrified. Immediately he spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I. Don't be afraid." Then he climbed into the boat with them, and the wind died down. They were completely amazed, for they had not understood about the loaves. Their hearts were hardened. The loaves was the feeding of the 5,000. Okay, let me give you a little background on this story. Jesus had earlier, prior to this, had crossed over maybe the same lake. I don't know where he was coming from, but him and his disciples were in a boat. Jesus was in a deep sleep in the boat, and the disciples came and woke him up and said, "How can you sleep through this?" And so Jesus says, "You have little faith," and he gets up and comes out and with a word calms the wind and waves. And at that point, the disciples say, "Who is this man that can control the wind and the waves?" So it was stirring then the question in them. So that takes place, and then he goes and he feeds the 5,000. And then after that, this takes place. So I want to take you back a little bit. That's one brief history. Now I want you to consider the disciples. Okay, these were guys who were trained in Scripture. They knew all the stories of the Bible, particularly the story of Jonah, right? Very similar. Jonah is out at sea. He's running away from God, going the opposite direction of Nineveh, and this great storm comes up on the sea. And the people are trying to figure it out. They cast lots. They decide it's Jonah that it's who's causing this. And long story short, Jonah says, "If you throw me into the sea will calm down." So the men reluctantly do that. They throw Jonah into the sea, and lo and behold, everything goes calm. So Jesus' disciple, knowing that story, and then combining it with him in the boat, calming the wind and the waves, and then connect that to this story where Jesus walks out on the water. They're putting all of this together. So now when Jesus walks onto the scene, walks up to them on the water and gets in the boat with them and everything calms again. Because remember, the wind was strong because they were straining at the oars. So he walks up, gets in, sits down, and they're like, surely this is the Son of God. Now, I've said this many times. I get very jealous of the disciples because they were able to witness all of these amazing miracles. And it would be nice to just be able to say, man, without a shadow of a doubt, obviously, this is Jesus, the Son of God. But we don't have that benefit to see these kind of crazy miracles. I believe all these miracles took place so that everyone would understand that Jesus was the Son of God. Otherwise, he'd just be another guy that's forgotten. So God knew what he was doing with Jesus. Jesus knew what he was doing. And still today, we worship him and know who he is. But my question, my devotion for you tonight is, who is Jesus to you? What impact does he have on your life? Do you recognize him as the Son of God? And what does that mean for your life? Think about those things, and soon we'll be back together in church and we'll be able to talk about all of this stuff. Sarah and I are available to the youth group all the time. You can private message us on Instagram. Most of you have our phone numbers. We'd love to talk with you. Man, we miss you guys. And we'd love to talk to you about these things. This is sort of the end of my devotion, but I want to remind you that Sarah is doing devotions on Instagram every Sunday. And hers are great, probably much better than mine because they're nice and short. So make sure you check out Sarah's devotion and also answer the questions that she's putting up on Instagram every day. It's just some way that we can connect with our youth group because we miss you guys so much. Hey, listen, seriously, we love you. We miss you. We're hoping that you're at least enjoying some time at home with this quarantine, and we can't wait to get back together again. Love you guys.